I've known Zelda for a couple of years. In actual fact, I used to work with Zelda, and we used to work in an independent optometry practice. There was 3 optometrists in the practice, and all 3 of us had different roles. And one of the things that I loved about Zelda was her attention to detail with every single thing that she did. You know, she knew that she spends a certain amount of time with patients, and during that time, she does certain routines, procedures that she knows that will give the best outcomes for the particular patient. And today is an interesting topic that we're going to be talking to you guys about. And I figured that, you know what, let's put Zelda in front of the camera for a change and hear her story in terms of where she's working now, how did this come about, the lessons that she has learned, and so much more. So if in case you're wondering what the topic is all about, it's about pediatrics. Zelda, thank you so much for just setting up time for us to have this interview. I really, really appreciate it. I know you guys are very busy, but for those that don't know you, who is Zelda?
Sure. Well, my journey began as a normal optometry student, and never thought of specializing in anything specific. And kids definitely was not one of them. So as a young optometry person, I think most don't feel like kids are their passion. I didn't think it was one of mine, to be quite honest. So I was just working with you in town and tried my own venture. It was not successful. I had to find new work. I was pregnant at the time with my second child.
Wow.
And so it ended up being the lady I work for now that decided to hire me. She was pregnant at the time too. So it took a pregnant lady to hire another one.
Wow.
And it was very new. It was very stressful. I think I worked approximately about 5 to 6 years as a normal optometrist, where pediatrics used to, what I know now, I actually feel quite scared for what we did, you know, and I've learned so much now. I had to go through my nose, I had to study some of the tests over again, and why did we do this, and what's going to happen if this doesn't work, or if there's a problem with this, how does it impact the visual system. And what I've learned is that it's not just about seeing, it's about how the visual system actually works. And from what we're testing with kids, it applies to most adults as well. You know, they can't see, well, they all of a sudden press bulbs and they're struggling with their plus readers. But why? So there are so many things that I've learned.
All right, so let's give people context, because obviously, like you said, you were in private practice before for a period of about 6 years. You ventured out into your own journey, and eventually you landed here. For those people that want context in terms of the type of environment that you're working in right now, this practice is purely focused on pediatric optometry.
Yes.
All right, what is the youngest age you guys get to see?
All right, so from the age from about 4.
Okay.
Yes. So then going up, obviously. So our main focus is, so would you like to know about the test first?
Let me put it this way. What are some of the stuff that you used to do in normal optometric practice that majority of people are used to, that you don't do now? And what are some of the things that you're doing now that you had never done whilst you were working as an optometrist?
Well, I never checked binocular vision. In a normal private practice. Definitely not in depth.
And what are some of the tests that you do in checking binocular vision? Because obviously we all studied these, but when we got into practice, depending on the type of practice that you're working in, a lot of the tests we don't get to do. So what are some of those binocular vision tests that you do now that you never used to do in like a general practice, if I can put it that way?
So we check convergence. We actually do check tracking, which is very important in terms of kids.
And what are the procedures that you do? What are the names of the techniques that you would do to check that?
So we check slow pursuits,
Okay.
we check cover test, we check convergence, we check the binocular stability with the rock posture board.
Okay.
We check accommodation, flexibility with the flippers,
Okay.
for example. We check if they suppress. So we check color vision, we check stereo vision. So diagnosing a kid depends on various factors.
Okay.
So, and a lot of the time things link up if there's a problem. So you can't just rely necessarily on one test. So you have to look at it as a whole. So there's a whole series of tests.
All right. Where do you start? Do you start with the VAs? Do you do autorefractor? Where do you start when that 4-year-old child walks into the practice with their parent, and the parent is complaining that, you know what, my child struggles to see as clearly and comfortably as we think they're supposed to be seeing? Where do you start with that child?
So I prefer personally to have the parent in if it's the first visit.
Okay.
I prefer them to be in the room, ask the parent questions. If the kid can communicate, I also direct questions to the kid,
Okay.
just to get a general idea. Then I also we use the autorefractor, just checking what the visual system is doing. Not
Okay.
necessarily as an aid to this is the prescription, more
Okay.
to see if the prescription is fluctuating, how much is it fluctuating, just to get a general idea. Then they can have a seat, I do cover tests, I do slow pursuits. Lastly, before I try and do refraction, I check the VA. So I do the binocular section first,
Okay.
and then I check the VA from there.
All right. How do you build trust? Because obviously, with an adult, one of the first things that we would try and do is establish that communication, two-way communication to build trust between yourself and the patient, in the sense that as they're telling you the chief complaint, you telling them why they're experiencing what they're experiencing,
Yes.
what led to that, and what are the possible solutions that can be available for us to solve that. Now, with the 4-year-old child, in the beginning, how do you then establish that trust relationship from the onset? Is it something that is easy to do, or is it very difficult to do?
Yeah, I don't think it's easy.
Okay.
It depends on the parent, and it depends. I suppose you get a feel, right? So I don't think there's a certain recipe that you can follow. I think you have to just go with the flow, engage the input of the parent. Depending on, most kids don't have symptoms, so it's very difficult to say, you know, yes, this will be a problem. Or what you can do is you can say, that sounds familiar, I have an idea, let's do the test and see what the result is. So you have to acknowledge their complaint,
Okay.
whether it's valid at the end or not. But in the beginning, you have to acknowledge and you have to listen.
Okay.
I think that's the key.
So the tests, is there standardized tests that you do, or are they influenced by the chief complaint or the age of the child? Or is there a baseline that these are the convergence tests, these are the color vision, this is the test that we're doing to check the visual system and so forth? Or are there certain tests that you will do based on the chief complaint or based on the initial?
So some of the tests do depend on the child's age.
Okay. Like what?
For example, to try and figure out the lag.
Okay.
Like if you would do it on the phoropter, for example, they don't necessarily understand what is asked. So then you can do MEM rather, or you can just do MEM on all the kids and compare the results,
Okay.
for example. In terms of stereo vision, the norms say they should be able to do all the sections. But I find that from my experience that a lot of kids don't understand what they're looking for.
Okay.
So that makes it harder to determine, is it because it's a problem, or is it because they don't understand, or that discrimination has not developed yet. So there are some things that you have to take into consideration. The tracking, so in terms of slow pursuits, the younger the kid, the worse it's going to look. So some things do progress, you have to take it according to age, and the more kids you see, the easier it becomes.
Yeah. You mentioned something earlier on. You said that you prefer the parents to come in, especially if it's a first-time
Yes.
patient or child that comes to the practice. I remember when I used to be in practice, I always had this notion that I don't actually want the parent in. But obviously that was not a pediatric orientated practice.
Yes.
It was a general practice, but then the 6-year-old will come and
Yeah.
it's a Saturday and you're the optometrist that is there, so you need to see the
Yeah.
parent. Because sometimes I found that a child will complain, but the parent will be in denial
Yes.
that no, my child can see. You just want to give my child a pair of glasses.
Yes.
Do you find that happening a lot?
Yes.
Because at least when the parent, so what are the dynamics that you have found in having the parent here and you are now having to tell them that your child has this problem and this is the way we will solve this problem? How do you communicate with the parent when there are those challenges?
So basically, I prefer them to be sitting in with during the examination, so that if something pops up and I want to explain to them, your child's eyes are supposed to be doing this, but it's doing this.
Okay.
You can physically show them what needs to happen.
Okay.
So that it's also basically educating the patient. The test is an hour. What are you doing in that hour? When the parents sit in, they can actually see what you're doing.
Okay.
Especially if it's parents that have been to an independent optometrist that don't specialize in pediatrics. So it's about educating the patient as well. And then you get the child who's malingering. Now, the parent is convinced this child can't see. And that's a challenge,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And then you put prana lenses in and the kid thinks they can see and the parent needs to see it. Otherwise they're not going to believe you.
I hear you.
So it goes both ways.
Very interesting. And there's an optometrist who's watching this and be like, yeah, you know, I've always been thinking of getting into pediatrics, but I've always been worried that the examinations take too long, or there's multiple visitations that are required before we actually get to the bottom of what the problem is. What is the dynamic here in the practice that you're working with? Worst case scenario, what is a typical challenge where you found yourself having to bring the child in for more tests before you actually prescribe whatever that it is that you're prescribing?
So generally, we don't have a problem in terms of that.
Okay.
The compliance is really good if we feel a second test is necessary. We also do visual therapy and we do work closely with schools as well, because
Okay.
our practice specifically does help the child's reading tracking ability, so the reading efficiency as such. So that does broaden our scope a little bit. But just to refer back to your previous question about the parents, parents do also value the fact that you don't just want to give them glasses. And a lot of the time, visual therapy is so underrated.
Okay.
And I do the therapy and I do testing. So I can see the improvement the child has made. So in my first year working here, I had a little girl, her marks weren't great, but she was a bright young girl. And she was suppressing. It took me a while to figure it out, but she was suppressing here. So anything further, she had double vision. So she either had to come really close, or it had to be further away. And it took some time. The parent was diligent. They brought her in twice a week for therapy sessions. She did have glasses of the more hyperopic, not too bad, but eventually, after a year and a half, her marks almost doubled. No, she doesn't really need glasses anymore.
Wow.
And the self-confidence, because children think they can't read, and meanwhile it's tracking physical eye movements, convergence. Kids think they can't see, or parents think that their kids can't concentrate. Meanwhile, their eyes physically cannot concentrate.
So that was where the visual therapy then comes in.
Yes.
And obviously there are costs involved. Does the medical aid pay for that?
Most medical aids are fine. We are a discovery practice, only unfortunately, but they do, so from savings they do cover it.
Okay. And so you have to obviously communicate that with the parents in terms of the costs that are involved, the number of sessions that would be estimated to be involved in the visual therapy routines, and obviously if the classes are needing to be prescribed, you will obviously get that involved. Your communication to the schools, Is there a letter that you communicate with them with, or do you phone them, or how's the communication with the schools so that the teachers have an understanding of what's actually happening with the child's vision? What do you guys do for that?
After the first assessment, we do a visual assessment report. So that's a specific outline of what we've tested, a brief description of what it is, what the results were, and whether it was below or above the mean. So we would email the report to the parents, and if they prefer to the teacher or the head of department, whoever referred them. So we've got schools referring to us, so they inquire reports back. So
I see here you've got a whole bunch of contact lenses in this room, and we're dealing with a pediatric environment. You guys are fitting contact lenses to children. A lot of optometrists would say, no, children should not be fitted with contact lenses. But you guys being a pediatric oriented practice, what's your experience or regarding contact lenses in children?
So it's not really that much up to us. It's about the parents and the cost, unfortunately. So the parents don't want to put the contact lens in their child's eye and take it out, or they're not comfortable with it. And the other reason is it's just too costly. So
because they need to have both.
Yeah. To be quite honest, we don't do a lot of pediatric contact lens. Maybe from 12 and up, more regularly, but not. We've got here and there a few, but not many.
In you coming from a practice that was focused on not only general optometry, but a lot of specialty contact lenses. Now coming here, you're doing pediatrics every single day, visual therapy every single day, but you and I have the same degree, right? With you having the same degree with a lot of other optometrists. Where did you learn the skills to be able to be in this practice, or you learned it on the job?
So I shadowed for 2 months. Because I feel my pediatric skills were rusty, and I did not feel confident in texting the child. So, and that scares people off. So I must say I'm glad I stuck it out. I almost didn't go through with it, but I've grown so much and I've learned so much. And the fact is that you can actually draw that through to adult testing as well, because we do also adults, but the main focus is the kids. Yeah, and it can make such a big difference in the child's life. And if you gain the trust of the child, you gain the trust of the parent. True. And then, my older child, the reading isn't so great, and I'm wondering, maybe I should bring that one for a test too. And then you gain the whole family. So
makes sense.
Yeah, because you've built that trust, and they see what you do. So it's actually amazing.
Wow, very, very interesting, Zelda. And which part do you enjoy the most? The testing or the visual therapy component?
To be quite honest, I can't choose because I like. It makes it interesting because the one day I do therapy, the other day I do testing. So it's not monotonous. So it's a little bit different. All the kids are different. No child is the same. Just when you think you know this is how the rule works, this is the box the child has to fit in, it does not work like that.
Does it get overwhelming at times? Because it's as if you're dealing with a child. I don't know if that makes sense. When you're dealing with an adult,
yes.
Adults come with different personalities, characteristics. This one has so much money and they feel entitled sometimes. This one doesn't have money. There's so many dynamics that I play. But with a child, it's like, would you do this for your child type of a thing?
Sure.
Does it get overwhelming at times, having to tell the parent that, hey, this is the problem, and the child, you don't get the buy-in of the child in the management solution that you have recommended for them? Does that get frustrating? Because I love children, but I don't think I've got the patience to
Let me tell you, I don't have the same patience with my own kids. So yeah, it's strange age, like with other people's kids, I'm fine.
Okay.
Like, because I'm not generally a patient person, but for some reason this just works. But it is frustrating. You get two scenarios. The parent comes in, the school referred them, but they feel that my child actually does not have a problem.
Okay.
Then you do pick up a problem, and now you have to like convince the parent that they need to work on this. So then it can be very intimidating. And on the second hand, they really feel there is a problem, and then meanwhile there is not really a problem. So it does go both ways, and I must say that can be frustrating at times. Dealing with a parent is actually harder than testing the child.
I hear you. Very interesting, Zelda. I think a lot of people that are watching this are going to enjoy listening to this conversation, because I think there's so much opportunity that exists in literally turning one's practice into a pediatric orientated practice, because the amount of kids, especially the last year,
Yes.
that are now spending.
There will always be kids.
You know, the whole kids, but even the way we're now spending time in front of digital devices and screens.
It's been a problem.
In terms of diagnostic procedures, have you guys incorporated a lot of new technological advancements that have taken place over the years, or do you find that the tests that were existing 10 years ago are still relevant today, in terms of from a diagnostic point of view?
Well, in terms of the beats, for me, the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then visual therapy, is there any online digital therapy stuff that you guys do, or is all in-house? Do you prefer that way? Because I know there was a practice in India. They came up with a whole lot of digital
exercises and
stuff like that, and I was like, oh, but doesn't that defeat the purpose? But it's
so yes and no.
okay.
There's a place for it. It can't just be that.
Okay.
You need free space for the eyes as well. So different exercises, different apparatus. There are some, generally when kids do come in for visual therapy, 90% of the time they will have to do exercises at home as well. That is not digital.
Okay.
So, and also that depends on what the problem is. If they are suppressing, then digital, we can provide them with red, green,
okay. So it's
tools and
you just need to know what you're doing and see what would be best for that particular individual.
Yeah.
You seem to be having fun, eh? You seem to be enjoying. I mean, how many years now is it that you're working?
3 actually.
And would you say that you working under someone who has been in this type of working space for way longer than you and I helps from a mentorship, leadership, and a guidance point of view?
Definitely. It's very hard to just go out and just start your own. I would recommend definitely shadowing someone, learning the procedures, why you're doing it like this, what's its significant outcome, because it just puts everything in perspective, and if it's really for you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Zelda.
You are?
I really appreciate, I think I need to get back into practice and start working on those kids as well. But everyone, if you're not yet following iAfrica Media, make sure to connect with us on all social media platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and connect with us on the website. And we look forward to you being on this chair, as we would love to interview you. No matter where you are, whether you're in Ghana, Cameroon, Nigeria, Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, Tunisia, wherever you are on the African continent, we would love for you to be part of iAfrica Media. Until the next time, take care.
Bye.